Hey, you guys, I wanted to come on here and talk about a tweet that was recently made by LeBron James and talk about our unconventional and exasperating pathology to display weakness and cowardice in the face of tyranny. And I'll be discussing a few different subjects in relation to LeBron James because I feel that each of these events has the same connection. One thing I fail to understand is why Black people appear to have this fear when it comes to addressing the wrongdoings of the people who oppress them. All day, I see us talking about unapologetic this, unapologetic that, and the moment comes for you to express yourself and your feelings towards a subject or a situation, you backtrack, you rescind your initial statement, you claim that we misinterpreted or we misconstrued your words. And really, I'm tired of Black celebrities being used as the face or the spokesperson for the disparagement that the Black community faces. It's perfectly all right for them to show their support and sympathy for when some type of catastrophic event befalls us, but they always end up looking foolish and delete their statements. But before I really get deep into this, I want to show you guys the tweet LeBron James made. So the post he made initially was saying, "You're next," and it has a picture of a police officer from the larger society. I really don't see how that was considered hateful because my perception of this was accountability. It didn't indicate that some unforeseen action was going to occur to incite further violence or hate. But of course, anytime a Black person has something on their mind and wishes to speak on an issue that disproportionately affects our community, you have the larger society whining and complaining about how it's hate, despite the fact that they've done some of the worst crimes in history. But because this post received so much backlash and vitriol, he took it down and later provided an explanation as to why he deleted the post. He then made another post saying, "I'm so tired of seeing Black people killed by police. I took the tweet down because it's being used to create more hate. This isn't about one officer, it's about the entire system, and they always use our words to create more racism. I am so desperate for more accountability." I think it would be more logical if I break down what he's saying first and then talk about those other topics I wanted to bring to you guys' attention, so it'll make a little bit more sense. But I made a video just a few days ago where I gave an analysis on Black people referring to the state of fatigue they feel about their experiences whilst living in this country and how it's counterproductive to even waste breath saying this if there are no plans or actions to refute the mistreatment being given to your community. If LeBron has no intentions of trying to do anything other than typical gestures of symbolism, it doesn't make sense to sound like this broken record where you regurgitate the same rhetoric millions of other Black people do when it comes to changing or impacting the system that negatively affects their lives. The next part of this post I want to talk about is this bit where he says it's being used to create more hate. This has to be the most infuriating part, honestly, because the hate is not being caused by us. The source of the hate stems from white supremacy. As much as you think you're adding fuel to this fire by directly calling and stating the pathology of the larger society, they are the ones inciting violence and committing homicides unjustly to us and have been doing so since 1619. You cannot say you're unapologetic if you're having to explain or give justification to your actions. And I've said this before 1,000 times now, but social justice warriors are not interchangeable with revolutionaries. A true revolutionary will possess foresight and think tactically before executing a plan of action or saying something that they might regret later. Social justice warriors, truth be told, are what a lot of people are on social media while they think they're parading around doing something so declarative of a revolutionary. And the part LeBron mentions in his post about they, he's referring to the larger society. Not sure what the covert coded language is for because we all know who they is in reference to. So that part I find to actually be very interesting. But the larger society has the resources necessary and at their disposal to weaponize and vilify us. And this is something, again, that has been enforced for such a long duration of time. However, if Black people talk all the time about how unapologetic they are, then that means they shouldn't be sorry or apologize for what they're saying, right? So then why is LeBron so concerned about what they're saying if we're all pro-Black, we're all activists, and we're all down with the cause? I'll tell you why. The reason everyone is suddenly invested in the struggles Black people go through is because this is a lucrative market. Unfortunately, Black struggle is something that's profitable for all the wrong reasons. Even with Black celebrities, they know we are susceptible and vulnerable to extended compassion because that helps their brand. And I also want to say this due to our own pathology, as I had discussed previously in my video about being Black in America, we will gravitate and welcome with open arms anyone that seems to express a genuine concern and empathy for our community's problems, even if we're not fully aware of that individual's intentions. And this is something that plays to our detriment because of our inability to assess situations accordingly. We are a very emotionally reactive community, and so because of this mechanism, it does impede our competence in terms of critical thinking and using rationale to make distinctions when required. If we were to expound upon this further, thinking with emotion in the heat of a moment clouds your judgment, which inhibits your capability to effectively make favorable decisions. Think about it in layman's terms. Would you send an email to your manager who just made you upset? No. You would wait until you calm down and maybe not even send an email at all, or send one when you have a clear mind and you're able to formulate logical points of concern rather than speaking from a place of anger. For whatever reason, this thought process seemingly has flaws in the minds of some Black people because in areas of social interactions, they'll say things out loud and randomly, such as LeBron James, and then later on withdraw what they say. And it is really so embarrassing that we can never seem to stand firm on things that we say. The last part of his tweet, before I move on, talks about his desperation for accountability, making it seem like he's a dog thirsty for water. I'm not sure what it is with this over subservient display of weak and buck brokenness, but I don't want any affiliation or association with it because it is very cowardice. It exposes feebleness, and the fact that we don't take matters into our own hands as if we are eagerly awaiting a different outcome is disturbing to me. You cannot possibly hope to wait another 400 years for the larger society to hold one of their own accountable. And this is one of those few rare circumstances, so he's going to be desperately lusting after an event that might not even happen in his lifetime. This situation almost parallels that of Nick Cannon when he made the statements about the Jewish religion and he thought he could make statements about their faction, but Nick Cannon did not have any type of contingency plan established for if shit hits the fan. So when that time came for him to face the music, he was backed into a corner, and Viacom had severed ties with him until he went on this buck breaking campaign where he was being overly apologetic to rabbis, and it must have worked because Viacom reestablished their relationship with him some months later. But it really just goes to show that we shouldn't look for leadership qualities in the faces of people who are clearly out of touch with our realities. Now, keep in mind, LeBron's post was in reference to Ma'Khia Bryant, who tragically lost her life on that same day that the Derek Chauvin verdict was rendered. You would think the rage that Black people feel about that would be justified because the system of racism is one where it is relentless towards us. So for him to feel like he had to delete his post goes to show that he's whipped and buck broken. Because if you didn't care what anyone thought, you would say whatever's on your mind and have thick skin when it comes to repulsion or pushback. And let's address why this keeps happening amongst Black celebrities. Some of you may have read this book, and for those who don't, I suggest you purchase and read it because it does a good job at breaking down and deconstructing the thoughts that permeate the minds of Black celebrities. This book called $40 Million Slaves breaks down the shackles that still enslave the Black elite and Black wealthy. We see the illusion that these people are their own boss until their ringleaders remind them that they are not to speak out of turn unless they want to face the wrath of expulsion and utter destruction of their careers. I'm going to read this excerpt from Amazon so you guys can gain some insight into what this book talks about. And it applies to people like Nick Cannon, LeBron James, and really any Black celebrity or Black elite. From Jackie Robinson to Muhammad Ali and Arthur Ashe, African American athletes have been at the center of modern culture, their on the field heroics admired, and stratospheric earnings envied. But for all their money, fame, and achievement, says New York Times columnist William C. Roden, Black athletes still find themselves on the periphery of true power in the multi-billion-dollar industry their talent built. Provocative and controversial, Roden's $40 Million Slaves weaves a compelling narrative of Black athletes in the United States From the plantation to their beginnings in 19th century boxing rings to the history making accomplishments of notable figures such as Jesse Owens, Althea Gibson, and Willie Mays. Roden reveals that black athletes' evolution has merely been a journey from literal plantations where sports were introduced as diversions to quell revolutionary stirrings to today's figurative ones in the form of collegiate and professional sports programs. He details the conveyor belt that brings kids from inner cities and small towns to big time programs where they're cut off from their roots and exploited by team owners, sports agents, and the media. He also sets his sights on athletes like Michael Jordan, who he says have abdicated their responsibility to the community with an apathy that borders on treason. The power black athletes have today is as limited as when masters forced their slaves to race and fight. The primary difference is today's shackles are invisible. I really don't think I have to say much more than that. I think William Roden did a good job of breaking down the illusion that everyone seems to have pertaining to black athletes and this freedom that they appear to have when in reality they're under the same subjugation that we are. It may differ in some aspects, but for the most part, when it comes to these plantation league owners, these black athletes better not step out of line or they'll suffer the consequences. Overall, we should continue to focus on what steps we can take to improve the community within our immediate jurisdiction. I think something that will be beneficial to us is we should start attending city hall meetings. It's one of those places you can go where your local government will listen to the concerns you have in your community. You have a higher chance at creating change by starting locally and proposing ideas and solutions to help rectify any issues you experience. And personally, I don't think it's wise to stand with black celebrities who backtrack and they're twiddling their thumbs and unsure if what they're saying could come back to affect them in a negative way. We need to take matters into our own hands and work towards reversing damage that our community has suffered as a result of the destruction caused by the larger society. I don't want to make this too long, but I thought I would just talk about the same tired interaction that keeps manifesting in these social spaces. We talk about how tired we are, but we're not doing anything to change our conditions. So evidently, y'all must not be too tired because we still remain stagnant and regressive. I am relieved and thankful that Derek Chauvin got charged, especially for George Floyd's family, to know the man who took their loved one from them won't just walk away from this. But I'm hesitant about the sentencing, so I'll reserve my enthusiasm until after the sentencing. And I'm also extremely sorry for Makia Bryant. I cannot imagine the pain that her family is going through. I know it is so heartbreaking and devastating, so you guys, please send your condolences to her family. But in the meantime, I'll just go ahead and just talk to you guys in the next video.